Energy subsidies are measures that keep prices for customers below market levels, or for suppliers above market levels, or reduce costs for customers and suppliers. Energy subsidies may be direct cash transfers to suppliers, customers, or related bodies, as well as indirect support mechanisms, such as tax exemptions and rebates, price controls, trade restrictions, and limits on market access. Eliminating fossil fuel subsidies would greatly reduce global carbon emissions and would reduce the health risks of air pollution. Direct global fossil fuel subsidies reached $319 billion in 2017, and $5.2 trillion when indirect costs such as air pollution are priced in. Ending these can cause a 28% reduction in global carbon emissions and a 46% reduction in air pollution deaths. According to Greenpeace, worldwide damages from fossil fuel air pollution amount to $2.9 trillion. Annually are $8 billion a day. Main arguments for energy subsidies are. Main arguments against energy subsidies are. Types of energy subsidies are. Overall, energy subsidies require coordination and integrated implementation, especially in light of globalization and increased interconnectedness of energy policies. Thus, their regulation at the World Trade Organization is often seen as necessary. The degree and impact of fossil fuel subsidies is extensively studied. Because fossil fuels are a leading contributor to climate change through greenhouse gases, fossil fuel subsidies increase emissions and exacerbate climate change. The OECD created an inventory in 2015 of subsidies for the extraction, refining, or combustion of fossil fuels among the OECD and large emerging economies. This inventory identified an overall value of $160 to $200 billion per year between 2010 and 2014. Meanwhile, the International Energy Agency has estimated global fossil fuel subsidies as ranging from $300 to $600 billion per year between 2008 and 2015. According to the International Energy Agency, the elimination of fossil fuel subsidies worldwide would be one of the most effective ways of reducing greenhouse gases and battling global warming. Along with this, elimination of these subsidies was welcomed by the G20 nations as a way to reduce expenditures during the recession during the 2009 Pittsburgh summit. In May 2016, the G7 nations set for the first time a deadline for ending most fossil fuel subsidies, saying government support for coal, oil and gas should end by 2025. According to a 2019 report by the Overseas Development Institute, the G20 governments still provide billions of dollars of support for the production and consumption of fossil fuels, spending at least $63.9 billion per year on coal alone. At the time of the 2020 G20 summit, a policy brief found that in general, governments have not enacted policies that sufficiently drew down fossil fuel subsidies since the 2009 Pittsburgh summit. According to the OECD, subsidies to nuclear power contribute to unique environmental and safety issues, related mostly to the risk of high-level environmental damage. Although nuclear power contributes positively to the environment in the areas of air pollution and climate change. According to Fatih Birol, chief economist at the International Energy Agency, without a phasing out of fossil fuel subsidies, countries will not reach their climate targets. In 2011, IEA chief economist Fatih Birol said the current $409 billion equivalent of fossil fuel subsidies are encouraging a wasteful use of energy, and that the cuts in subsidies is the biggest policy item that would help renewable energies get more market share and reduce CO2 emissions. Global fossil fuel subsidies reached $319 billion in 2017. Although this number rises to $5.2 trillion. And Russia, the European Union, and India. According to the International Energy Agency, phasing out fossil fuel subsidies would benefit energy markets, climate change mitigation and government budgets. The International Energy Agency estimates that governments subsidized fossil fuels by US $548 billion in 2013. 10 countries accounted for almost 3/4 of this figure. At their meeting in September 2009, the G20 countries committed to rationalize and phase out over the medium-term inefficient fossil fuel subsidies that encourage wasteful consumption. The 2010s have seen many countries reducing energy subsidies. For instance, in July 2014, Ghana abolished all diesel and gasoline subsidies, whilst in the same month Egypt raised diesel prices 63% as part of a raft of reforms intended to remove subsidies within 5 years. The Canadian federal government offers subsidies for fossil fuel exploration and production, and Export Development Canada regularly provides financing to oil and gas companies. A 2018 report from the Overseas Development Institute, a UK-based think tank, found that Canada spent a greater proportion of its GDP on fiscal support to oil and gas production in 2015 and 2016 than any other G7 country. In 2015 and 2016, the largest